Was the woman who argued the case and several other cases about gender equality. And she argued 6 cases between 1971 and 1976. And one of those cases made it illegal to deny based upon gender. So ladies, look at how far we have come since 1974. Think about it. You could not have a credit card or any other type of credit or even a deposit account without your husband. If you showed up at a financial institution, they would tell you to go home and get your husband. Today, we own our own homes, our own cars, we have our own savings accounts, retirement accounts. So we've come a long way in a very short amount of time. The next area that I want to go to is who said they paid 10% to God and 10% to themselves. And these ladies lived into their 100s. So I'm going to give you some names and you key in to the chat who you think. The first name is Dorothy and Lou A.G. Denman, D-E-N-M-A-N. So you can put Denman, D-E-N-M-A-M. Sadie and Bessie Delaney, D-E-L-A-N-E-Y. So that's Sadie and Bessie Delaney. Or was it Abigail and Isabel Carlson, C-A-R-L-S-E-N? So was it the Denman sisters, the Delaney sisters, the Carlson sisters? All right. Well, I tell you what, we have 100% on this because everyone said the Delaney sisters. If you have not read their book, Having Our Say, I would tell you, it's a must read. You must read the book, Having Our Say. These ladies were professional. We had one who was a teacher and one who was a dentist. These are African-American sisters. Their father was born into slavery. If you listen, it's a rich history of North Carolina. I won't give the whole book away, but I want you to read that. And so Bessie graduated in 1923 from Columbia University School of Dental and Oral Surgery. Her sister Sadie attended Pratt Institute and then transferred to Columbia University. And she held a bachelor's degree in education and a master's degree in education in 1925. So read the Delaney sisters. But what they talked about is they lived into their 100s. And so they said the 10% that they set aside for themselves is what they lived on well into their 100s. And so as we go tonight, you're going to see, I'm going to talk a lot about wealth. And so, think about you pay yourself 10%, you pay your tithing of 10%, right? And that's what you live on. So the last question that I'm going to have for you is, what is wealth? What is wealth? And so I'm going to give you some answers. Wealth is net worth, money, peace, what is precious to you, what makes you feel good about yourself, or all of the above. What is wealth? All right, again, I have some top-notch people in the room this evening. Everyone has answered correctly when you say all of the above. Wealth is what it is to you, because you may be comfortable in one space in life and someone else is comfortable in another. And Reverend Hale said it best, a few minutes ago when she talked about the love of money being the root of all evil. You don't have to be a millionaire. You need to learn to live within your means. And you live your best life. And you don't go out and do unethical, immoral things to get what someone else has. You be a good steward over what God has blessed you with. And that's what it's really all about, right? And making sure that we are good stewards over our financial affairs. Okay, well, good. We've got some icebreaker off the shelf. And so now we're getting ready to get into the meat of the lesson for tonight in her 2 cents. And Jaira is going to help me out with the PowerPoint presentation. And again, if you have any questions at all, I want you to feel free to place it in the chat. You can either put it into the general chat or you can put it in a private chat to me. And if it's in the private chat, I will not call your name. Remember that there are no dumb questions, right? Everything is relevant because we need to know. Again, women have only been handling money in this fashion overall as a whole since 1974. So there's a lot of unanswered questions, and there's a lot of how do I achieve X factors. And so we're going to talk about that tonight. And so where I want to start is making your 2 cents work for you. And if we start with scripture, let's go to Proverbs 21, verse 5, where the word of God says, the plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. And so this rule or this proverb is really summing up budgeting, planning for retirement, saving for emergencies, and they're all different ways of being diligent in your planning. Okay, so now I'm going to look at what some other people say about wealth. What do they say about money? And Dave Ramsey says to measure your wealth not by the things you have, but by the things for which you would not take money. You know, for me, you know, my family, I wouldn't take a dime. I wouldn't take, you know, $1 million. There is no amount of money on this earth that I would take, you know, for my family. That's precious to me. And each one of you have something that's precious to you that you want to protect that money cannot buy, right? I want you to also know that building wealth is a marathon. It is not a sprint. Discipline is your key ingredient. So we must be disciplined. Unless we just go out and have some type of windfall, it's going to be a marathon. It's a lifelong journey. Okay. Now, another Dave Ramsey quote is, I believe that through knowledge and discipline, financial peace is possible for all of us. And I agree with that. It is. So let's start looking at how you build your wealth. How do you build your net worth? Do any of you understand when someone says, what is your net worth, what that means? You know, and some of us don't. And so I'm trying to get this in the middle of the road because some people may know, some people may not, but I want everyone to leave here on the same page of how you know what your worth is, and how do you, if you're not where you want to be, how do you get there? So this is just a quick balance sheet where you can calculate your own net worth and give you what someone would say your wealth or your worth is. And so you're going to start with a simple balance sheet with your assets, and your assets are things that you own. Okay, that is your savings accounts, your checking accounts, money markets, IRAs, you know, anything that you have that you own, your furniture in your home, your actual home itself is over here as an asset. That is what you own. And then to the right, you have your liabilities. Your liabilities are what you owe. Okay. Now, the same way that your home is on the asset side, the debt is on the right-hand side where you're going to subtract and then the difference is what your equity. You hear people saying your equity, your worth, right? So your liabilities are what you owe, your credit cards, your installment debt, your car loans, those are what you owe. And then the difference, the assets minus your liabilities, that is going to be your worth. So everybody can do that. You can do it on a piece of paper, scrap paper. You can do it on an Excel sheet, whatever is easiest for you. But that's how you know what your worth is. If you go into a financial institution and they ask you, what are your assets? What are your liabilities? And they're coming up with your worth. That's what they're talking about. Okay. And so then if you say, well, I want to be worth more than that, then you take this and you start filling it in and then you figure out how you get there. Okay, so your wealth or your net worth is the abundance of your valuable possessions or money. It is your state of being rich. It is your material prosperity. It is your plentiful supplies of any resources. It is the plentiful supply of any desirable thing you have. It is your well-being. That is your individual prosperity. That's what your net worth, what your wealth is in financial terms. So then you may say, how do we obtain wealth? Well, it's the money that you earn and how you invest it, where you put it. So you can put it in a savings account. You can place it in a certificate of deposit. You can put it into stocks and bonds. So I encourage you to learn about investing. So again, and I just go back to scripture on some of these, and I looked up Proverbs 24:27, put your outdoor work in order and get your fields ready. After that, build your house. This is a building process, okay? It is not, again, it's not an overnight, it is a building process. So how do you obtain that? Okay. Any questions? Again, if you have questions, please place it in the chat. Then again, it's a steady process. If you cannot do this on your own or do it alone, you can seek a financial planner. You can seek a financial counselor, a financial coach. And one of the quickest ways to gain wealth is to invest in real estate. Typically for the African American, your home is your biggest investment. And that's where you obtain your wealth. And I'll give you a sidebar on this. So as we all know, throughout our history, we can have a house in an African-American neighborhood, or it can be in a neighborhood of a different persuasion. And those values throughout history have been very different. And what we have had to do with a lower valued home is take the equity and educate our kids if we can, if there's any equity in there, buy a car, what have you. Where the same house in a more affluent area, same house, but it may have a $300,000 value where we have a $30,000 value. So that's the equity. And so you can already see that if you have equity of 300,000 versus someone who has equity of 30,000, it's inequitable, right? But that's what you have to work with. So how do we get there so that we get to a level playing field? Now, I understand things are much better, but that's where our ancestors, what they had to contend with and what they had to deal with. But now we have more tools. We know how it is set up. We know how it's designed, and we know how to map out how we get there. And these are the roadmaps to get where we desire to be. Okay. All right. So again, how do we obtain this wealth? How do we become financially independent? How do we get a comfortable savings account? How do we retire early? How do we start a business? How do we earn extra income each month? How do we have a financial safety net? Well, Luke says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish, everyone who sees will ridicule you, saying, this person began to build and wasn't able to finish. So again, every time you get a paycheck, you should be taking funds and placing it in your savings account. That savings account is what you own. It's going to be in that asset column. Okay. All right, next slide. Okay, again, how do we begin to obtain the wealth? We're going to set a goal. This is going to help you determine where you want to go. You should have short-term goals, mid-term range goals, and long-term goals. Now, how do you invest that? We know that the riskier the investment, the more return it is. However, we also know when you have a risky investment, the same way that you can earn more, you can also lose, right? So you have to determine, what is your risk aversion? Do you want to play high stakes and possibly lose that investment? Or do you want to be more conservative? So I will tell you that having your funds in a federally insured deposit account is safest. Having it in your savings account, having it in your money market account, or a certificate of deposit. When you go into your financial institution, you want to look for, if it's a credit union, you want to see that it is federally insured by NCUA. You need to look over at the teller area and look to see if you see the NCUA symbol. If you go into a bank, look for the FDIC. These are the federal insurance companies that if they are absorbed, if they go under, that your money is saved. And right now it's up to $250,000 per account. If you have more than $250,000, it's not that it's not insurable, it's just how you insure it. If you run into that issue, let me know. I'll help you structure it so that to make sure that you never lose any of your money. That's safest. US Treasury, that's the safest money on the planet. Okay. That's when you want to play safe. Now, those interest rates are typically a whole lot less. If you have risk that you're willing to take, then you can move into your stock arena. So you have to decide what end of the spectrum you're on. Do you want to go low risk or do you want to go high risk? Because stocks will yield you more money when the stock is going up. But if the stock market crashes or that particular stock crashes, then the issue becomes you will lose that interest and you will possibly lose your investment. So those are the things that you need to think about. And then I would say, set aside some type of funding, whether it's low risk or high risk, every month, because that's what you're going to live on later in life. And only risk what you are willing to lose. Only risk what you can afford to lose. If you cannot afford to lose it, don't place it in a risky place. Put it in a low risk. Again, if you have, some people will say, I have nothing to lose, then go to your financial institution and use that source. Lower rate, however, you won't have to worry about losing a dime. Okay. Then, what's another area where we can obtain wealth? Again, and I alluded to a little while ago, real estate is wealth creation. One thing that man cannot make and one thing that man cannot take, and that is land. God made the dirt. We did not. We cannot. There's a certain amount of dirt, and that's why real estate does not go away. Now, I'm not saying that the market, the economy doesn't crash, because it does. We've seen it. Housing values have gone down, but if you hold on to it long enough, the market will come back up in real estate. Once you lose cash, it is gone. Unless, again, it's in stock and you just sit there and hold on to it. That's why you have to be able, if you're going to be investing in stocks, you have to be in it for the long haul, because the market does fluctuate up and down. Think about when you're trying to create this wealth, instead of thinking about wealth creation, think about value creation. Think about, if you own real estate, you can rent that real estate to someone else, and you can have them paying for your property, and you can be in another property and the values are going up. You can get to a point in retirement, sell the house, pocket the cash. So again, also, as you are going through this journey called life, if you need to borrow for your children's college education, you're going to get a better rate if you can use the equity in your home than if you went out and got an unsecured loan. So think about, what is the value? Okay, does that make sense? Okay. Now, again, how do we obtain wealth? We obtain wealth when we exchange debt for equity. I told you earlier that your assets minus your liabilities, what you own less what you owe, is your net worth, correct? So if you are decreasing your liabilities, then you increase your net worth. Now, let me give you this caveat. As you are decreasing your debt, you want to make sure that some of that cash that you have on your asset side stays there. You can reduce it short term, but then turn around and replace it, because your assets minus your liabilities equals your net worth. So the lower you have your liabilities, then you begin to move up the net worth. And that's how you have wealth creation, is always minimizing debt and increasing your net worth. Okay. So you can take every, like 10% every month, and apply it and get rid of that debt load until that's gone. And then when you finish paying that debt, stay on the same regimen. Take that 10% and funnel it into your cash and watch your cash grow. And then take that cash and put it into a higher yielding deposit or investment account to gain more interest, again, increasing your cash. All right. And I'm looking for questions. So again, feel free to place your questions into the chat. So again, wealth creation through real estate is one of the best ways to become financially independent. And again, when you have real estate, it's going up in value. When we are renting, we are paying someone else to live. We are building someone else's real estate portfolio. We are building someone else's cash portfolio. But when you have your own, you are building your portfolio, your real estate portfolio, your cash portfolio. So think about, if you purchase a $100,000 property, you have 20% of your own money down. If you take 20% cash and you pay it down, then you already have a 20% equity in there. And that's before the property values start going up. And the more the property value goes up, the more you increase your assets. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Now, home ownership, let's talk about this because I received some new statistics a few days ago that was very disturbing to me. And it showed that African American home ownership percentage has decreased. Now, in 2019, US home ownership was about 64% for the US, for people in the US. But with Black Americans, it was only 42.1%. When I looked at the trend line, African American home ownership was the lowest in the poll. I understand that we have been hit, and when we get to the next screen, you're going to see this. We have been hit hardest with COVID-19. We were hit hardest back in 2008 to 2010 when we had the mortgage debacle. And some of these things we have not recovered from. But again, if our home is the biggest purchase we make, if it's the biggest part of equity and net worth that we own, with us decreasing our home ownership and choosing to rent, then we are decreasing our wealth. Also remember, in home ownership, you receive tax credits. You could also have tax deductions. So that's going to lower your tax liability. So again, lowering your tax liabilities, the less that you have to pay into the government, which again means more cash into your account. So think about where we want to go and how do we get there. And think about it like this. Ecclesiastes 11:2 says, invest in 7 ventures, or yes, in 8. You do not know the disaster that may come upon the land. So I'm saying diversify your investments, your deposit accounts, savings, CDs, money markets, real estate. Okay, those are things that you know will go up in value. And if you notice, I haven't said anything about cars. I know we all need cars because we have to go to work and we have to take care of our business. But cars are a depreciable asset, meaning they go down in value. And I'm talking about what goes up in value. That's, so when you think about, and I'm going to get to another slide I'm going to show you later, but think about what goes up in value. And that's how you begin to build your wealth. Because again, I want each and every one of you to live just like the Delaney sisters who lived to well over 100. And how do we live well? Okay. How do we live well? All right, next, please. All right, thank you. So now we have, a lot of people have received stimulus checks. And I was told, Amazon trucks come through the neighborhoods. There's no televisions on the Walmart stands. Save your stimulus checks, ladies. African Americans have been hit the hardest by COVID-19. Statistics have already shown that. The national unemployment rate was 14.7%. However, for Black men, it was 16.1%. It went from 7% to 16.1%. For the African American woman, it was 5.2. It went to 16.4. So think about, and I know this is the women's service tonight. However, we have men that we're married to, right? We have fathers, we have brothers, we have sons, we have husbands, we have the whole family dynamics. Look at what is happening to our Black men. Look at what's happening to our Black women, and then think about how that impacts our household. Okay. And sometimes in this COVID-19, both the husband and the wife have been out of work, or they have suffered with some type of reduced pay. So save your stimulus checks. I understand if you're trying to save your home, save your home. I'm not telling you not to do that, but save every dime that you can. because we don't know how long we're going to be in this predicament. You don't know when the economic cycle is going to swing back up. You don't know how long when we have an upswing in the economy. You don't know how long that's going to last. And again, if we're going to live well and plan to live into our 100s like the Delaney sisters, we're going to need those funds, because at some point in time, we don't want to work until we're 100. We want to retire, and we want to retire well. Okay. All right, let's move on. Thank you. So now let's think about final expenses. So like I said earlier, everyone may not have a mortgage. Everyone may not have a car. Everyone is not in the same place, but everyone has expenses, whether it's lights, gas, water, food. We all have that. So all these things help in living there. But then whether we're having to pay for ourselves or a family member, everyone has final expenses, right? We're paying final expenses for someone. And did you know that most of us as African Americans outlive our insurance policy? Okay. And what I mean by that is, if you purchase a life insurance policy at the age 21, 22, think about what you pay in that policy to 70, 80, 90, or 100 years. By the time your family member needs it and cashes it in for you, you have already paid more into that policy than what your family members get out of that policy. Now, life insurance, I'd rather people have life insurance than no insurance. But if you can be diligent, take that money, instead of putting it into an insurance policy, put it into a deposit vehicle and let it sit there, so when your family member needs it for you, that cash is sitting there. Because here's what happens. You pay for this from age 20 something to 70, 80, 90 years old. But when you get around 70 years old, your pricing starts to increase. And then they tell you, oh, if you don't pay the increased premium, we're going to reduce the face amount to several $1,000s. I just had someone over the weekend I was talking with. They had a $50,000 policy. It started at paying $50 a month. Now it's gone to $180 a month, and told if they don't pay the increase to $180, it's going to be dropped down to $15,000. So what have you paid for? $15,000. If you started saving this at 20 or 30, you can have $15,000 by the time you're, again, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. But you have to be diligent. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this Proverbs 21:5, when it says, the plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. Okay, so think about that. You have to be diligent and you have to be disciplined. Okay. All right, so some savings tips, because some people are saying, wait, I need everything I make. I don't have excess to do this. So some savings tips is save on your grocery shopping. Try couponing. Look for the sales. Okay. Negotiate your car insurance rate to a lower rate. Say, I'm going elsewhere. Avoid monthly bank fees. Watch how you are spending your money and try your best not to overdraw your account, because when you're paying $25 to $35 for every check that is an NSF, that can amount, I've seen people do 10, 20, 30 NSF charges in a month. So you take, let's say $30 times 10, you're at $300, right? So that's a bill. That's groceries. So remember, watch your dimes, watch your pennies, watch your cents very much. So again, pay yourself first. Get disciplined enough where you can live within your means and you can take that money out of your checking account or move it from a checking to a savings before you pay anything else. Okay. And then review your budget often. Go back and review. So at this point, there is a question in the chat. So I'm going to read that. And the question is, should you save in this type of environment if you're in debt, or should you still concentrate on paying down debt, credit cards, student loans, etc.? That is a phenomenal question. And what I'm going to say to you is you have to do both. It's not either or, it's both and. Okay. So what you do with your debt is, especially with student loans, right now is a great time to either press pause on the student loans, call the student loan center, or have your payment changed. And so what's happening, a lot of people have been furloughed, or have a partial or a full furlough. If you have either one, call the student loan center and let them know that your pay has been reduced. They will reduce your payment, whether it's temporarily or permanently. So call about those plans and programs. What I'm going to tell you is that financial institutions do not want your house. They don't want your cars. We're not in the real estate business and the car lot business. We will work with you. So call and try to get those things refinanced and reduced in this environment. And then the difference in what you're paying in debt, take that difference once you lower that payment and then put that part into your savings account. So if that didn't answer your question, let me know and I'll be happy to talk with you further. Okay, so it is 7:46. My time to stop was at 7:45. And so at this point, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you so much.